Patsy will be in
Charlotte, David, you guys there?
Right enough.
Sounds good.
Okay. I'm ready to call the meeting to order if everybody else is ready. Yes. All right, good. Okay.
Thank you.
Relatively.
Well, she said she would be ready. Yeah, all right. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. Thank you everyone for coming again. As you remember, because all of you were here at our last board meeting, at the last board meeting, we anticipated that there may be board action that was necessary before the end of the month. And so we scheduled this special meeting so that we would have a meeting to take that action if need be. That action didn't happen. And so the original purpose of the meeting really didn't take place, but we wanted to continue to hold the meeting because there are other issues for us to talk about. That's why we haven't got here in the first place, and I appreciate everybody coming in. I think everybody knows that City Council approved leases with the three tenant partners, the Art Museum, the theater, and Colburn on Tuesday night. Is there anybody who needs to be briefed on that, or is everybody knowledgeable about that and everything? Okay. Well, and so, since that time, and we can kind of all join in on this part because there's been lots of activity in the meantime, but lots of it is one-on-one kinds of things and very little group activity. The executive committee met, and what we have been working on sort of since Friday is a notion that, well, let me just take a step back. I think that Pack Place's two orders of business are a successful transitions from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. And the second interest that Pack Place has is doing what we're obliged to do within the constraints that have been given to us as far as dispersing the county funding. So those are the two things we've been working on. And the notion that we had discussed with the executive committee was that Pack Place could contract with the tenant partners to continue to provide the services that it's provided in the past. And, you know, we can rearrange how that's done and so forth and work on that. But that was the basic idea that we were working on. As I understood it, there was a meeting then yesterday of the tenant partners. And the outcome of that meeting, and I am really taking lots of activity here and distilling it into a few words because I'm only one slice of all of this. The outcome of that meeting was that Lynn was supposed to call me, which she did. And when we compared notes basically on the outcome of your meeting as well as what we were talking about doing on the Pack Place end, it appeared to both of us that we were essentially headed in the same direction and talking about the same thing and talking about the same kinds of relationships. So what we wanted to do was to bring to the board an action step basically today that reflected what we understood to be sort of the general agreement agreement's too strong a word, but the general notion that we were all working under. And generally, as I understood where we are, I've talked to Mark about this, and I've communicated some with the executive committee about it, is that we need an interim transitional step to get us from here to the next step. That the group proposes that, the tenant group proposes that a committee be made up of the four, we're suggesting we include the one amount for 5 committee members that will talk about the transition issues and come back to our respective boards with proposals on how we move forward transition-wise with the final result. In other words, put the job of figuring it out on this committee that is made up of one representative from each of the partners. That seemed like, to me, a good idea. I have not tried it out with anybody in my end of things.
Who's the fifth?
Well, they're the 3 tenant partners and Pack Place and YMI.
Well, no, but not YMI, because it just has to do with the building.
Right.
And YMI isn't a tenant of the building, it just has to do.
Well, we can talk about that, but I mean, that's, as I lay the groundwork here. So what we worked on today, and this was really on the fly, was the resolution that we prepared. Let me take it past it around. That we sent out to everybody about an hour ago. I wanted to give you a chance to see it. I didn't even have a chance to do any kind of introductory remarks, so it may have been sort of an empty gesture, but you didn't know what you were looking at. But the resolution that was prepared by me and Mary and reviewed by Lynn before we got here today is one that's in front of you. What we were trying to accomplish was some sort of understanding that this committee would be appointed to work, to meet, to work right away on the transition issues, all of them. That in the meantime, Pack Place would be basically just preserve the status quo in terms of what Pack Place does, in terms of the building and so forth, until the next step, whatever that is. In other words, that interim step, which is today, would be covered by everybody standing down and doing the job that they've been doing. And then we'll make changes as we move forward. So that was the basic notion that we were trying to get in front of everybody today, so we can hash it out and know what happens on Friday, which is when the lease is, the Pack Place lease is not renewed. So, we already need to discuss, well, would anybody care for me to read this out loud, or is it okay if you just read it for yourselves? If so, read it for yourselves, and then we'll discuss. Is anybody still reading? Raise your hand if you're still reading. Yes, ready for questions. Well, let me make one comment here, just to get us oriented. Lynn pulled me aside just now and said we need to work some on the last resolved paragraph. That there is sort of an unspoken implication in there that Pack Place would continue to be own the building or be responsible for the building in a way we don't mean to say. That what we mean to say is, and as I'm speaking for myself here, is that Pack Place Inc. will contract with the tenants.
No, the partners will contract with Pack Place Inc.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah, the
Yes,
thing is that it's important at this point, because the city has made it the tenant's responsibility for the management of the building. How the building is managed is now the responsibility of the tenants. So it's up to the tenants to decide what services and where, and what services they need, and how those services will come to them, how they'll be delivered, and who will deliver them. Within the context, we understand that there's money which is kept for taking care of the building by Pack Place. So the way this resolution currently reads, it says that the board is resolving that Pack Place Inc. will continue to provide services. But in the current situation, the board can't make that decision. Only the partners can make that decision. The partners need to decide that Pack Place will continue to provide services. And that's what needs to be corrected in the way the resolution reads. Patsy, you seem to think that that's,
No, I'm just trying to figure this all out then. So if this goes on, then the Pack Place Board is automatically dissolved,
no, Pack Place Inc. continues.
but the tenants decide what needs to be done.
With the building.
With the building.
I think this is actually, my sense is it might actually be quite easy, because I believe, it's my understanding, that Pack Place has this money coming from the county. So money rolls into Pack Place. You can choose to use this or not. If you choose to use this, we'll use the county money to provide the service. If you choose not to use this, then you can use your own funds to provide the service. I think exactly.
Well,
or you can-
but the county money is provided to you for a specific reason.
It's not transferred.
It's not, it's for specific reasons to maintain and take care of
To
the building.
maintain and take care of the
Yeah,
building, so you
no,
can't
we're not-
use it for something else.
We agree with that.
And this is where I think we need to be real clear about how this is written, and this is my real concern. The count, my.
Yes, excuse me, Carol. Yes.
Edward?
Yes, I'm here, although Carol was speaking. Are you,
Who is that?
It's
It's
Charlie.
Charlie Rose.
We are having a great deal of trouble hearing anybody other than you speaking, so.
That's okay.
Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But if you could ask the others to speak up or if you could just sort of quickly summarize when somebody else says something.
Okay,
That would
good.
be extremely helpful.
We're hearing you much more clearly, by the way, right now, so something's changed already. All right, well, Carol was speaking, so let's pick up with her, and as you speak, maybe point your face at Charlie while you're talking. That may help a little bit.
I want to speak into Jerry's camera. I think it's really important that we remember the stream through which the county funding runs, and that is through the Pack Place Board. I have asked what can be said at the board meeting this afternoon, and the word is that during one of the two board meetings in August that the county commissioners will hold, they will make a decision regarding funding for Pack Place. So I think it's really important that if there's any discussion about how county money runs, whether if it's stated in a resolution that it's going to run through these separate leases or through the partners and into Pack Place, I think that may be a scary way to go. I'm just putting it out there. And this gentleman right here who came from vacation for this important meeting stated it exactly right.
Right. And the resolution doesn't address that. The resolution says the people that are involved in this, the partners, need to get together and talk about how to go forward.
Is that not what's been supposed to have happened over the last year or two?
It was.
So I guess my question is, why do we think anything's going to be different now if they haven't been able to get together before? What's different
Well,
now?
because now there are direct leases in place.
But the funding is still coming from Pack Place.
Right? And that's something the partners need to discuss.
I just don't see a lot of difference, but maybe I'm just missing something.
Lindsay, on the last paragraph, yesterday at the meeting, we assumed that what was coming forward was an offer.
Was an
I think
offer,
that's
right.
So I'm wondering if we look at the second line and just say, may be necessary, this corporation shall offer to, like you said, the tenants, to continue. So just put that one in there.
Oh,
Shall offer to the tenants to continue to provide.
Where are you?
He's in the last resolve, right in the middle. So we would say, comma, this corporation shall offer to continue to provide.
Glenn, with that, do you think?
I think, can you just talk about this conditional, the condition that's in the last two sentences? Can it just end at past?
Well, Mary's concern is that we don't have any, as of August 1st, Pack Place has no authority to be in the building at all for any purpose whatsoever. And so it's meant to address that concerned that there's something in writing that says the Pack Place could continue to be entitled to move through the facility and do its job.
Yeah, I think if you would just come to the art museum and tell them what you want, we could say yes.
So you want to take over everybody else's space too?
It becomes our space. It is our space according to the new lease, but that doesn't mean that anything changes until demolition
The
begins.
theater space doesn't become your space. The new museum space doesn't become your space. It becomes their space based on their leases. So why should they have to come to the art museum to have this, to put toilet paper into the bathrooms?
Who does?
I mean, that's what managing the building is changing the light bulbs, but making sure the place is clean, making sure that toilet paper, paper towels are in place, vacuuming the floors.
I'm sorry, I'm missing something, Barbara.
I don't
Is
understand
there-
what you want anyway, except you want the whole building, you want to take it over.
We don't want the whole building.
Anyway, back to your resolution.
And to me, I think the whole point of this is we recognize the game is changing. Everyone, it all has changed, it is changing. But we all want the lights to be on August 1st. We all want the bathrooms to be cleaned on August 2nd. We all want doors to be unlocked at the appropriate times on August 3rd. And there's going to be a transition process. And that transition process might take 2 weeks. I'd be stunned if it took 2 weeks. It might take 6 months.
It could take some
It
months,
shouldn't
exactly.
take 3 years.
Correct.
But there's a process where we all need to be coordinated to make sure it all works for all the member organizations.
And we agree.
Ms. Scott? So,
And I think that the elements we discussed yesterday. When the leases are signed, the tenants will have responsibilities that Pack Place used to have.
Right.
Pack Place has the money, but would have paid for those services. We would not, and the county at this point is saying the money remains with Pack Place. Pack Place is offering to provide the services we're obliged to do by our leases. And Pack Place has the need, in order to be able to offer us those services, to have the right to be in the building. I think those are the 4 key things that are being addressed. And I think you could wordsmith it, but I think this, that's the intent.
Well, I think the conversation we had yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, was that we appreciate an offer. We didn't know what it was going to be, had no idea what was going to happen today, and would like some time to consider whatever the offer is that you do make and get back to you about how we might want to structure that.
I think that in the conversation we had yesterday, there's a thought that the basket of services that you provide might need some change. So to say, you would handle the building exactly the way you handle the building today may not be what we're going to ask you for.
But I don't think that this says that.
Well, it does.
Correct, it does, well,
It does.
continue to provide the operational services that it has in the past.
Maybe not in the same way.
I think that's part of the transition.
It-
And there needs to be some flexibility in how this is all approached, instead of having it rock solid before we even start things.
Exactly.
And this is authorizing the board to make that offer.
To make the offer.
To make the offer. He doesn't articulate what the offer is, and that's still open, I think, to negotiation. May I ask a question on the later section? Okay, we can always go back to that. I think there was a comment earlier on the composition of the transition committee, and I would just like to ask the question, I'm not making a recommendation, that if we're really, part of this is transitioning, that the tenants remain the same, we have different responsibilities, but a lot of responsibilities are transitioning from Pack Place to the city. So I would ask the city, who is ever speaking on behalf of the city, if they feel they should be a part of this transition committee.
I'll take a shot, and Fred and Gary, please chime in. We're talking about services provided by Pack Place Inc. to the tenants at this stage, and the city would be fine if there were an arrangement made. I mean, and Ed, you mentioned, Pack Place Inc. doesn't necessarily have the authority to be in the building, but I think that Fred or Gary or I said each of the tenants that we can't imagine standing in the way of that. I think that it's fair to assume that as long as the tenants have an agreement with Pac Place to be in the building, that wouldn't be an issue. You know, John, clearly there are a number of known and some unknown things that need to be worked out as to details about, you know, the city's sort of landlord-related responsibilities. It's clear that the intent of the leases, and I think they largely achieve having the tenants become responsible for much of that. But Gary has continually pledged that he'll be available to help address issues as they arise. Gary, I don't see a problem with us being in on the discussion of this committee function. It would seem appropriate to me. But I want to make it clear, I don't think we want to or need to have a role in matters that are between Pac Place Inc. and the tenants.
The end result of this committee is a recommendation that comes forward recommending regarding ongoing management and administration. And that recommendation, I'm assuming is eventually going to the city. Here's what we've discussed. Would it not be advised, you know, rather than wait till the end to have input from the city while that's being developed? So it's just a question. It's not a recommendation. I think that's.
I mean, Gary, we'd be glad to be at the table. Is that? It might be helpful for us to be at the table. But you know, I just want to make sure nobody feels like we're elbowing our way into matters that are between Pac Place and the tenants.
Certainly be there to assist in any way we can and to provide encouragement that collaboration be achieved.
Are these, those who are going to be on this committee, are they representatives of each of the tenants in Pac Place, or are they executive directors of the tenants and Pac Place?
As I understood the agreement yesterday, it was the chair to the board or something. And when I drafted this, I said designee instead, because I just figured out something we could sort out.
Yeah, no names will go forward. I think it is important that the executive directors, who are the people who are in the building and actually use the services, I don't know whether they're the committee members, but obviously they're going to be very involved.
I'd like to put a plug in, if I may, and maybe you all do not know who Sharon West is. She's here as chair of the YMI board, and I think it's tremendously important that this board be represented in these discussions so they have an idea of what
That was the
direction.
recommendation I was going to make, there, because even though we're not in the building, per se, considered a tenant, we are partner.
Absolutely.
And so I'm sure our representative would like to be, and that's Richard Ford, our senior staff,
Just
a part of this discussion, so it should not be a big issue in that term.
It shouldn't be a big issue, though we're looking at the fact that the county has funded you separately going forward to being a precedent of how they may fund other organizations going forward.
I understand that, but the funding, it has nothing to do with the partnership as it exists currently. So just to be a part of hearing these discussions and adding, I don't think it's a big deal. Thank you.
Absolutely. I make that recommendation.
So I guess what I'm not going to answer the city question, while I'm not voting on the board as official, if the city is so willing, then they should be added to
Well, what I hear Mark saying is everything. They have to participate at whatever level. I wonder if they really want to be a voting member of the committee or just be included in the conversation.
No, it's for the tenants to decide. I mean, that's the thing. And there's a difference between being a partner in Pac Place Inc. and being a tenant of the building. I mean, this is all about what are the job descriptions for the people who live in the building? What are it's very nitty gritty about the operation of the building. It's not about Pac Place and its mission. Pac Place Inc. and its
I
mission.
mean, I agree that you would not want us to come to the end of the process and make a recommendation. The city say, well, we know you're going to do that. We can't go along with that. You know, we'd rather have them in it from the beginning so that you don't put yourself in that position. So they can participate in the meetings without necessarily being a voting member.
That's fine, thank you.
I'm sure they'll be just delighted to come to more meetings.
Well, I mean, I agree with what you just said, Ed. It probably is important that we stay engaged and
I think it'd be very helpful to be engaged as we go forward.
Gary, is there a member of your staff, senior staff, that you anticipate assigning to this, or would you be the initial person involved, or we just take that as it comes? I mean, I see this as
It's not clear to me what the function of the committee is and what form it's going to take, and I would defer any decision about who what appropriate level, what talents or expertise people would bring to the table until I know what we're talking about here. But as I presume, if you're asking for the mayor and council to designate somebody at the level you were talking about. You're chairs of the boards, so you ask to submit that to the mayor and council to appoint somebody? I mean, are you talking about a policy committee, or are you talking about operational personnel getting together and negotiating joint contracts for janitorial services or elevator maintenance? And do you want chairs of your boards involved? Form should follow function, and it's not clear to me what the function is. Or are you trying to create an oversight committee rather than have a full board there to then go send the managers away to put together a management plan and set up the subcommittee so that the managers report to that group rather than the full Pac-Place board? I'm not sure what the intent is.
And if I could piggyback on that just a little bit, this was the word I had from Dr. Green today this afternoon at 3 when I got this resolution. Her question is the purpose and the time frame of this resolution, and I think that's exactly what the city manager is saying. That's the same thing the county is asking. And I think that the city manager is exactly right as to who he would assign to work with this as to what the purpose and what is the time frame. So I think those two folks are on the same page, which is usually what happens.
So if I can jump in, I mean, my sense, again, it's a brave new world, and we have a general sense of what the structure is and where it's going with the leases. We have this transitional interim period where there's funding coming from one source, which might or might not still be the same. I'm hoping and anticipating it's the same as in August to fund these organizations through this year. We've been warned, and all these organizations have been warned, that a year from now that funding might not be there. So I think this is a process to get things in line over a fairly quick time frame to get things coordinated and organized without having the lights go off, without having the doors being locked at the wrong time, without having the bathrooms overflowing when there are 500 people in the building. And that's it's not clear from the resolution, from the leases, how any of that can be funded by the 10 organizations without using the funding that's coming through Pac-Place to do it. And all Pac-Place is saying is, we're willing to, even though we're done, we're willing to help with this transition period because we love the organizations that are involved. And it's got to be, someone's got to do it. And again, we've got the funding to be able to do it, so we're trying to help. And I don't think there's, beyond that, I think this is no, again, I said, it's certainly going to be 2 weeks, it's certainly going to be 3 years. If it's 6 to 9 months, now that's my sense of what the time frame is. I don't, and it's just, how do we get this stuff work more efficiently? And if all the tenant organizations work together and it happens more quickly, wonderful, it happens more quickly. If all the tenant organizations do not agree on things and it takes a little bit longer, well, we've dealt with that for years. So that's just, how do we make sure the lights are on, doors are open, and things function for the benefit of the people and the families in this community?
And speaking for an organization who has an obligation at Diamond Wortham, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, the Folk Heritage Committee, we're having our Mountain Dance and Folk Festival. I sure as heck want the doors open and the building great, because we're going to have 1,000 people there. Right, John?
Well,
The toilet's working. And the toilet's working.
So can we get a guarantee through Saturday night?
We leave here, but everything's good through Saturday. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But personally, that's very important to me, that we leave here today knowing that this building is going to function as it has, or, what's your shirt say?
To Gary's point, to Gary's points and questions, and Gary, I wish I'd written all those down because it was a great checklist. I think we all realize there's tons of issues. A lot of them are operational. Some of them, which is more staff-oriented, some of them are how do the organizations work together. So some of it is at the board level. So I think you're right, and that's going to include. We realize there needs to be a committee to manage this transition, to get from A to B. What the charge of that committee is not in the resolution, but I think that would be the absolute next step. What is the charge of this committee to accomplish, and that would take the conversation. Am I echoing that fairly? Or
The committee has been, there are, how many English teachers are there? Diagram the sentence, committee for the purpose of making recommendations. Who do they make recommendations to? So is it,
Yeah.
it's a committee of organizations designated to make recommendations, and who acts upon those recommendations?
Well, and if I
Well, they
say-
make agreements. The
Well, that's the
partners
question.
make agreements.
Is a recommendation an agreement? See, I don't
Well, you know,
know that the resolution is clear.
Again, I think based on the conversations yesterday, and I think there's a couple of arguments. There's the city, and then the goal for the continuation of the county funding is that we need to deliver to the county a plan for moving forward, to which we all agree, and say, does this work for you? So I think there's two audiences that these recommendations would go to, two governmental entities, would be the end. And probably, but that's the goal. It may not be that well stated, but it's the intent.
And are we correct, Gary, that when we select a group to provide services to the building, we need to get the approval of the city to our selection?
No.
No. Okay, so we don't have to present it to the city.
No, but I think just to clarify, John's suggesting that the Pack Place Board is empowering a committee of folks to make a recommendation to the county commissioner,
No.
To the Pack Place Board.
to the Pack Place
No.
Board.
Because the money still comes.
I think this just reflects one party's side of the agreement that we agreed to proceed with this 4 or 5 party committee whose job is yet to be defined and yet to be continued because we haven't had time to do that part yet. You know, they're not reporting back to this group, they're reporting back to their respective boards on whatever it is that's recommended by the group. So that, you know, there is no more sort of collective, you know, we're talking one-on-one to everybody, but the committee presumably would have the ability and semi-authority to hammer some of this stuff out, you know, rather than trying to do it around one big table.
May I make a suggestion, a wording suggestion? I think John's suggestion offered to the tenants too is great. And I would suggest that we, rather than have the phrase that it has in the past after operational services, to provide operational services as determined by the tenants. John, thoughts?
Or just end with operational services.
Well, that's what I had said.
Well, why modify it further? Leave it, if you just struck that is in the past operational services.
Again, to me, there's a lot of going back and forth on what I think is a fairly simple concept that, you know, the leases are in place, so Pack Place doesn't control the building anymore. Pack Place does have a lot of assets in an endowment. Pack Place does have this agreement with the county for funds to flow through. Pack Place is saying, we still want to help the member organizations. And we're telling, tell us what you need. If you don't want
That's
something,
exactly it.
if you don't want something, we won't provide it.
Right.
Perfect, that's, but Pack Place will still exist. I mean,
Right.
Pack Place as an entity still, or as a, Pack Place Inc. still exists.
Exists, yes.
Without real estate, without a lease, without anything else. But we exist with some assets
Correct.
and some influence, and we're trying to help. We're not trying to derail anything, and this is pretty easy.
But I also do think that like on August 1st, August 2nd, somebody's going to come in here at 8 o'clock and unlock the doors and get the ball rolling, the day started, and it will be like it has been in the past.
On that day,
Yeah, maybe not the day after. I mean,
Well, it depends on how fast this group works.
that's right.
Yeah. But you've got to expect that things aren't going to come to a complete standstill on the 1st of August.
Absolutely not. Right.
Charlie, are you wanting to weigh in?
So I agree with John's suggestion. Just put the direct stop after the word services.
Everyone, what you say?
I was wondering if you were trying to weigh in here. Was that you wanting to speak up? I can't, when you raise your hand, I can't see you.
No, I'm just trying to, it's a real concentration to understand what some of the others are saying.
Okay,
So I'm just trying to follow along right now.
okay.
It seems to me we might, based on what I've been hearing the past 10 minutes, that this might be converging on this resolution with the two changes John suggested, striking that it has in the past, and including the phrase offer to the tenants, that the corporation shall offer to the tenants
To
continue to provide. And, the city is very supportive of this conceptually, and I would move that we adopt the resolution with those two changes.
Second.
All right, let me read aloud then the last resolved paragraph so everybody knows exactly what we're talking about.
Make sure the guys on the phone can.
Yeah, I'm trying to say it out loud for them to hear. Can you hear, Charlie?
Yeah, when you're speaking, we can hear pretty well.
Okay, excellent. Well, we won't strike everything, will we? Well, let me read what I was understanding, if I'm understanding wrong, correct me. Resolved that until other agreements are reached by this corporation and other parties as may be necessary, this corporation shall continue to provide the operational services as determined by the tenants on the condition that shall offer to continue to provide the operational services as determined by the tenants on the condition that the art museum, the theater, the Colburn shall permit this corporation to continue its current access to and occupancy and usage of Pack Place Center, and I would add, as necessary.
I would accept that as part of it.
And could we just have a point of clarification? Can it just be clear that on this committee, the voting members are the tenants? And I don't know if it needs to go in the resolution, but I think that just needs to be clear to everybody. The people making the decision about the operational services of the building, that responsibility has been put by the leaseholder, the city, on the shoulders of the tenants. So the tenants are the voting members of this committee.
Well, this resolution does not create the committee. It basically acknowledges that there is a committee being formed, and that this maybe, and I guess it acknowledges that it's a resolution that we are agreeing to participate in the committee.
Okay.
And the other ones are too. Now, it may be up, there's sort of a decision-making process here that's got a missing link, but somebody has to decide formally, who's on the committee and that kind of thing. And maybe the committee itself will have to do that, I don't know. But there is no overseeing operational government here.
Right. This has all come out of the direction that the tenants have been given by the city, that we are now responsible for the building. And therefore, we need to make arrangements to see that the building is properly serviced.
So from a practical viewpoint, are you saying that someone from Pack Place would be appointed as the representative on this committee and would report
repeatedly report back to the Pack Place board for direction as to what that person could be authorized to agree to, or what? Because yes, you are going to need to have various agreements with multiple organizational parties, all of the different organizations coming to various agreements. I'm not sure I understand if this committee is more an advisory committee or a decision.
I would ask the people who were at the meeting and came up with the committee concept in the first place, what did you intend? For the committee to have authority to make decisions, or just simply authority to sort it out and recommend back to their organizations?
We realize we gotta get from A to B.
Yeah.
We're currently at A. We think we know where B is. How we get there, what we need to determine to get there. As Gary said, all the things, how do you deconstruct and rebuild? How do you manage it? There are multiple things that so this committee is more managing, or not managing, dealing with the transition to get from here. And I think.
And taking on the responsibility of supervising the building.
Okay. And
Right?
I think if we sat down.
The tenants
and-
are, rather, not the committee.
If we sat down and we made a list of what B entailed, when we get to B, we will have done this, and this. We can work our way backwards.
I
I
mean,
think
it-
there was a commitment to do it post haste, like in the next month.
I'm available next week. I can meet, we just have to talk fast.
Let me offer just a reflection, Lynn. I think that the tenants can get together and talk policy and strategy and all they want. It doesn't have to be in the context of this committee. This committee is one of the forums available, and it sounded to me like you felt like the constraints of this committee were where the tenants would coordinate. You know, so I see it happening at different levels. And I also think that there'll be plenty of dialogue directly between the tenants and the city that now have a formal relationship. And so, you know, not unlike what's happened the past few weeks, there'll be lots of conversations in different forms, but this establishes one that I think can be productive to help this forward. So I guess I would sort of call the question and say, look, can we move forward with this committee, realizing that there will be other channels and other ways to move this along.
Everybody ready to vote? It's on the resolution that's in front of us, which does and doesn't do the things we've all specified, okay? So, all in favor of the resolution as proposed by Mark with the amendments and so forth that we discussed, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. Is David voting today?
David, are you still there?
Yeah, David just said aye if you didn't hear it.
I didn't hear it. Okay, good. Thank you. Any opposed? All right, good. Thank you. The resolution passes. Hopefully it'll give us some guidance for the next couple of days and get us through Saturday night.
Saturday night at midnight. That's all we're asking.
Oh, you promised to be done by midnight this year?
I don't know.
Yeah, can I ask, Carol, can I ask a question? You mentioned the preferred timing of the commissioners on looking at this again.
Yes.
Yeah, Michael pointed out that he's skeptical that this will be figured out totally in 3 weeks, and it might be more like some number of months. I tend to hope it's fewer than 6 or 8, but do you think, Carol, that the commissioners expect an explanation of how this is going to shape up before they vote? Or, I mean, I'm wondering, would it be appropriate for the Pack Place to say to the commissioners, gee, we might prefer that you look at this in September or whenever things shape up a little bit. In the interest of the county funding, I'm just a little worried that we might not have as coherent a plan by the first or third Tuesday in August for them to consider.
Being the first Tuesday's next Tuesday.
Right.
I will see that they have the information they need. And, and I realize that before Tuesday it would be too short a time frame, but the dictate that I got was that there would be some decision making. So I'll make forays with them to make sure they're up to speed. Thank you. But I think that's a great point.
I just have one quick question that's sort of formulating in my head here, is that when this group gets together, is it all going to be on equal status, or do you hopefully foresee a leader rising to the top, and who's going to coordinate this, and where's the leadership going to come from?
We do need somebody who can be the convener, if nothing else, just to take the first step. Yeah.
I would like to say that John Ellis is the obvious person
Yeah.
to do that.
John Ellis does not agree with me.
It doesn't make any difference.
I think in yesterday's meeting, and I appreciate the board of confidence, I think there was discussion amongst the board members present yesterday, and I,
Hey,
Yes, Charlie?
can you kind of summarize what the conversation is right now, because David and I are just picking up snippets.
Well, we're talking about how to bring this committee together. And Patsy suggested that John Ellis do that, and John is giving his arguments why he thinks that's a bad idea. But that's all you're missing right this second.
Okay.
Basically, we need a convener. We need somebody to call the meeting to order and get it scheduled. You know, then the committee can go from there. And I guess each organization, by the way, needs to
appoint
designate
somebody,
somebody,
right.
which we can do here today for Pack Place and everybody else. So,
The Art Museum would be
Yeah,
happy
that's
to
very
have
helpful.
its
Thank you.
designee convene the first meeting.
okay, good enough. Speaking on behalf of Pack Place, we say, that's fine with us.
Okay.
See the other partners, so.
But shouldn't the city be doing it? It's their building now.
Well, this is a tenants organization, from where you look at it, so, not a landlord's organization. We need to designate somebody from Pack Place to serve on this committee. Some of us have gotten really tired. I'll say that in advance.
I wonder why we still have a board at this point.
I know.
We need to have a board.
Well, that's a good question.
I'd recommend Patsy, but I don't know.
I've got way more excuses than you.
We could, if you'd like to hash out who the designee's gonna be, then that's right now, we can do that. Otherwise, we can let the executive committee figure it out.
That's probably the easiest.
Yeah, that's the simplest way to do it.
Set a deadline on Friday?
After tomorrow, Friday?
No, and consensus, board and, I would suggest board and staff, not one or the other.
That's a bigger group.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to talk, with Hardy for one about that, because I think he has some fairly strong feelings about it, so maybe can we just table that?
Sure.
So we can get ourselves together the first time?
But-
It's off the table.
Smaller is faster.
Absolutely.
I think things are going to have to bounce back to staff, though, because it's the people who are in the building day to day that use the building that have a lot of the
Yeah,
knowledge.
we can
So now until we know something different from this committee, Pack Place will continue to provide the insurance for the facility,
Yeah.
liability, phone system, fire, life safety, HVAC, utilities, custodial and maintenance.
Right. As requested by the partners. I mean,
Is
some of
this
it-
the request, or do I wait for something written?
I think you wait for something written.
Okay.
That's my understanding the nature of what we agreed to here. So, okay. Anybody, we have one other issue, and that is Pack Place's legal issues with the city. We need to have a closed session to talk to our lawyer about that. And so we're going to get to that next. Before we do that, is there anything else anybody wants to bring up?
Yeah, I would like to bring up making the board smaller. If we're going into this new mode of being, I don't see any reason for a 15-person board. And I would move that we, maybe make that a 5 to 7-member board, but if it's just about deciding how the money's going to be spent, and that's the only thing the board does, I don't see any reason for all of us to be involved.
I don't agree.
We do need
Okay,
to
you guys meet on Friday.
Right.
Maybe that's a good topic for the board meeting on the 13th.
Well, we definitely need to take a look at that, you know. I think we need to get a little more water under the bridge before we do that. One thing Mary says is that we need to rework the plan of agreement consistent with whatever we end up shaking out all relationships to be. That'd be one place to start. You're talking about revising the bylaws to you know, reduce the size of the board, you know, which I think probably is a good long-range goal, you know, but I'm not sure we need to do it right this minute.
And by long range, it be 2 to 3 or 4 months.
It may not be as easy to do as you think.
I'm sure it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, the number of members of the board is actually also stipulated by the plan.
Is there anything else anybody wants to bring up before we go to closed session? Well, I would like to move that we empty the room with everybody except board members, so that we can meet with our lawyer and discuss legal issues.
Second motion.
Any objection to that?
Clarification of our status and the bylaws, do we consider ex officio board members or the
Executive directors?
Well,
I would go by their preference.
well, my preference was board members only.
Oh, you voted for
Yeah.
I have to leave anyway.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
It always is in you, know you love it.
Yeah.
I called you that.